Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Clean Libertarian Podcast. And I hope that by the time that you're listening to this, we are not in the midst of World War III. My God, what is happening? It just seems like it keeps ratcheting up more and more and more. I'm not going to do too much of an intro because this is a Dad Roundtable number 4. And if you guys have listened to the previous 3, you know that we tend to get a little long-winded, but rest assured, we talk about the war. We talk about what we can do to improve our community. And so the cast that we have today, we have Jay, Evan, KRS Jac, and then my good friend Ash joined us. And we covered all the topics, all of them. And I don't know, this is just a great conversation. I know you guys will get a kick out of it. So without any further ado, here's the guys.
Tuck, it's good to see you.
I am here.
Yeah, he's
I'm
there.
I'm in a remote. In a remote location.
Yeah,
So
live from a secure remote location.
Yeah, just adjacent to the bunker.
There you go.
So
Well, you know how we start things around here, man. We start with a few of us, then some more of us show up, and then some of us drop off. But it'll go as long as it's going to go. But man, I feel like we haven't done one of these in way too long. We waited too long to do another round table.
Too much stuff has happened.
Yeah.
The world keeps getting crazier and crazier every time that we come on.
First things first, where the hell is Fauci? What happened to that? I mean, he is gone.
He was starting to make his comeback tour. They're trying to scare us again. There was a city in China that they said that they locked down and they were quarantining people again. And then Fauci was starting to make the news again.
No.
So
I saw him on the news the other day at the in-laws house.
Yeah.
Something about a sub COVID variant. I wasn't paying too much attention to it. So
yeah,
was
2 weeks
on-
after. Yep, 2 weeks after Pfizer said everybody needed their 4th booster shot, and everybody started bringing this up again. It was great timing.
4th boost. I see Moderna's trying to get another approval too. It's just crazy, man. It's just crazy.
And still no word on the Novavax one, which is they're the company that got the original round of federal funds to create a vaccine based on traditional vaccine technology rather than mRNA.
Well, they got it approved in Canada.
Yeah.
Novavax did.
Yeah, which is funny because they're a U.S. based company in Maine.
Wow.
And all the development's happening in the United States, and it was done with U.S. tax dollars. So,
Wow. Yeah, dude, I don't know, man. I hate to say it, but I was glad to see World War III start making headlines because at least we could stop talking about COVID for 5 minutes, But shit. Well, on the topic, war with Russia. What do y'all think? That going to happen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like it from people I've talked to that are in the military. They're gearing up.
That's
people from the United States.
I'm going to borrow Ron Paul's line here. Sanctions are war through other means. I mean, we're already at war with them.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's not a shock that all those javelins are floating around Ukraine right now. I mean, the Obama administration, these are all Scott Horton, Dave Smith talking points, but like the Obama administration, funded the coup, but did not weaponize, Ukraine with any sort of military gear. And then the Trump administration did actually provide weapons to the Ukrainian government. So, over the past 11 years or whatever it's been, there's been a few, 8 years, 9 years? My math is terrible. So there we go.
Yeah, that's what's scary about it is that so I saw some leak, and you can't trust anything. We were talking before we started recording earlier, like you cannot trust anything you're seeing in the news cycle. everything's propaganda, especially when war is the subject. But I saw Zero Hedge release an article about how like some captured Russian document talked about a planned invasion of Taiwan by China coming up this fall. You see that, you see all these sanctions coming down, which that's always going to end in a conflict of some sort. That's not going to be a Cold War situation. That's going to be boots on the ground, I think. Seeing that happen, as fathers, like where are y'all's heads at with it? Like, what do y'all think about this? What is your move?
Well, if the war goes nuclear, I won't have to worry about public school anymore.
That's true.
It's so weird. Like it to me, it's like a movie. Like I don't believe anything that's happening. Like my first reaction is like the absolute opposite of what they're trying to tell me.
Yeah.
And to me now it's just fake. And I'm not even including it in what I need to do with my day right now. Ukraine, Russia at all. It feels so distant, so far away, and just such a lie. And I'm nothing about my day or planning has anything to do with that conflict. And it probably should because of inflation and all that stuff that they're going to blame it on. But it means nothing to me right now.
Well, it means nothing because we know there are lies about with causing the inflation. It's lies. We know that it's lies. Anybody with any common sense should know that it's lies. Right. And I'm with you, Jay. I don't know. It's anything that permeates my day. It's not something that I think about because I know it's all orchestrated. It's just theater. But unfortunately, it's theater that's going to cost a lot of lives. I believe it'll be hot.
Yeah, and, it is hot. People are dying.
I mean, yes, but I mean, as far as our involvement, it's I think it's going to happen. And with people bounce around the draft. I don't believe that part, but with having 3 sons that are all that age, it's kind of in the back of your mind a little bit. But
yeah, you're the one that has sons that are old enough to be in the military. My kids are.
I have one. I've got one that just got out. Like he's been out for just 2 years, but he's still an inactive reserve, which means he could be called back in at any point.
Damn, man.
So,
how's he handling it?
Well, I'd rather not say.
Okay.
I'd rather not say right now. I know what he's told me, and it kind of makes me proud in a way. But got
it. I like it.
And in a big way. Let's I'll just leave it at that right now.
Well,
private conversations. I might let some people in on it, but
no. I mean, there's a lot of people and states that are saying we're not going with the federal government, right?
Well,
I think Montana just said that we're done listening to federal mandates about oil drilling. We're just going to do it ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, who's gonna back this war from the United States point? I mean, the people that already signed up, but I mean, if they did a draft in all these flyover country area, who's going to go? Who's going to say
exactly.
Yes?
I made it very clear, and I've made it very clear that they will not be getting my sons. It's not happening.
For sure.
I can say that from my point of view. At least my youngest two, my twins, they will not be getting them. That's not happening.
So do people think that it may end up being, and this is something I've thought about since day one, when Russia rolled over into Ukraine, it's going to end up being like a Russia-China alliance, possibly Russia, China, and India. And that becomes like the new axis of evil of World War III or whatever. I mean, is that because this is going to be a long-term thing if this goes beyond just simply Russia and Ukraine as it stands. Now, I understand there are other countries that are providing, aid to Ukraine, and there's a lot of push to get like the U.S. directly involved and send troops on the ground and everything like that. But like, I think as long as that's not happening, we might still be able to, I don't know, skirt World War III. I'm trying to be cautiously optimistic here.
My thing is that like I'm looking at and I see there's not a lot of public fervor as far as us doing our thing, even if China jumped in on it, even if it was, or like you said, China and India. And this is my tinfoil hat and it's my podcast, so I'll just talk shit. It's cool. I see like an orchestrated false flag on American soil that is going to be absolutely shock and awe, pearl clutching, that is the modus operandi for this government, has been, since World War II. Even, I mean, not that Pearl Harbor was a false flag, but it's been well proven that they knew that was coming and they allowed it to happen.
Same thing with World War I. Yeah.
See, and I need to brush up more on World War I on that, but that's interesting if it's been around for that long. I recommend the Scott Horton versus Bill Kristol debate at the Soho Forum, and I don't remember if it was Bill Kristol who brought up like the Nazis in that debate and everything, but Scott was able to actually go back and say that like during World War I, both sides of that conflict had pretty much annihilated themselves, and then the United States decided in the last couple of years of the war to tip the scales and go in. And then there were all the unfair treaties that were, put against, Germany and everything like that. And hyperinflation occurred in Germany. And like it actually, the U.S. involvement in World War I actually partially contributed to the rise of the Nazi Party.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of talk about that. And there was something that was actually said as well about like the rise of the Soviets, because I believe the Bolshevik, the Red Revolution or Bolshevik Revolution, whatever you want to call it, took place in 1918. So the war wasn't even, World War I wasn't even over, when this was happening. And then of course you have other aspects of it. Everyone likes to forget about, the Armenian genocide and the Assyrian genocide that took place because the British actually hired those armies to fight the Ottoman Empire. So they would have to fight a war on two fronts, one in the Middle East and one in a European theater. And then afterwards, the British disbanded those people groups, took their guns, and allowed the Turks to slaughter them like cattle, which is why you'll find more Armenians and Assyrians in the United States or England than you will in the Middle East. Middle East would be a much more stable place today. Just a century ago, they had to let the Assyrians and Armenians and some of the Christian majority back then stay in power. But that may have been an intentional move. I don't know.
Huh. Hey, Ash, I think your mic got unplugged somehow or something.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I can hear you.
There you go.
Okay. But, so, I'm looking at that, seeing in my mind, it's going to happen, right? Like that something is going to happen. So it's like, how do I prime my kid for this? How do I, because she's at that like age now, she's 12. She's very impressionable. If she had social media, I would hope that she wouldn't have a Ukrainian flag next to her name. But I mean, that's the trending thing now, So it's like, how do I stop my kid from following the status quo and to look at the situation for what it is, not what their peers think it is, right?
Well, I mean, how do you do that? Social media, I mean, all the information about this war is coming through that system. Everything. And that's where all the marching orders is. It's like, this is how you're supposed to feel. This is what we're going to do. And this is all the bad people. So how do you do it? It's history, like you were going through, Ash. It's a crazy history of that part of the world for the last 100 years, 120 years. Ukrainian language is only like 50 years old or something like that. It's brand new. It's something that they created as the Soviet Union was separating apart, so they could have their own national identity.
Yeah.
And it's here it is. It's rewriting history, because right now the history only started 2 weeks ago, and what you need to do is teach what has been happening. The 8 years, the 30 years, the 50 years, and the 100 years. It's like, this is a really complicated situation, and that's all the further that you really need to go is just say, hey, this is really complicated. Both sides seem to be really bad. There's no reason to pick a side.
I like that.
Yeah, that's solid. That's solid right there.
For what it's worth, I have a 3-month-old, which is why I'm now being invited to the Dad Roundtable for the very first time. I will say that when I'm thank you. My wife did most of the hard work. What I will say is that actually, it's funny. Baby Ash really enjoys the Ron Paul Liberty Report. So that is our 20. That is all we get. That's as close to the 24-hour news cycle as we get in this household. And it's funny. My wife used to complain about the fact that we didn't have cable and we couldn't watch the news because the news is always on in her parents' house. She has recently reported that she feels much better about the world now that she doesn't watch the news anymore. And then when the news does come on, it's just Ron Paul Liberty Report, and it puts my son to sleep. It's nice and soothing for him. So, anyways.
Well, I don't even think my kids even know about it at 7 and 4. So, and they're jumping on YouTube and watching their own shows, and they have no idea. I don't even think my wife really understands or knows anything. So it's not even an issue here in our house.
I wonder if the Tuttle Twins has a book on like warfare or something like that, because that might be a good age for it. I just got the nursery Tuttle Twins books for reading, the kid at bedtime. Not that he has a clue what the heck's going on, but
yeah. I just see my deal is like, every single day, I watch the local news. I won't watch CNN or any of that, but I'll watch the local news. So I could see, traffic and any kind of local headlines and yada yada. And every single morning now they're talking about another person from Oklahoma who went off to Ukraine and they're now fighting with the Ukrainian army. And it's like, it's a lot, right? Like there's a lot of people here ready to go to war. And
well, is it a lot of people, or they just have to really search to find a couple people every now and then?
That might be it too.
I don't think it's a lot of people. I think it's the loudest voices. I mean, I think that when somebody picks up a rifle and says, I'm going to go to Ukraine, well, they're not going to pick up a rifle and then go to Ukraine. They're going to go to Ukraine and then get the rifle from there. And we probably paid for it at some point with our tax dollars. Right. But my point is that, that's a person who is going to be virtue signaling a lot on social media and everything like that. And then that story is pretty dramatic, so it gets passed around. I mean, the first thought that comes to mind, and I don't mean any disrespect to anyone who's listening to this, who's like, thinking about doing that or has a loved one who's over there. And obviously the crisis in Ukraine is horrible. And the civilian loss of life and even the military loss of life on either side is terrible. That's just my humble opinion. But the idea of people packing up and going that don't have a dog in that fight kind of reminds me of those 2 teenage girls that went and joined ISIS.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That, like, I don't know if anyone remembers that news story.
Yeah, I do.
It's like, I mean, you don't want this. You don't want to go to war. I mean, like any sane or rational person, like, and trust me, I think that there is a line. Like, I will do anything to protect my family. I will do anything to protect my neighborhood. I will do anything to protect my community. And then there's like certain lines there where it's like, hey, I mean, I don't go try to stop like, the violence that's happening in like the local metropolitan cities around me. But all of a sudden I'm willing to fly halfway around the world to try to help a group of people whose language I don't even speak, when, there's plenty of people here at home that actually need help as well. I mean, there's people that are homeless, jobless, don't have food, completely disaffected by the COVID regime. Like everyone in the globally is really in a bad way right now. So I mean, and here's the thing: I feel for the citizens of Ukraine. I get it. That's horrible and it's awful, but I don't think it's our place necessarily to get involved.
Right.
And when private individuals go out and do it, I mean, that's their personal risk assessment and their own personal decisions and their own personal responsibility. But those choices do impact other people. And I think that those stories get blown out to really reinforce this narrative of beating the war drums. And we got to go out there and, other than the liberty community and the recovery community, my other big community is the Second Amendment community. And I'm seeing a lot of Second Amendment YouTube channels talking the pro-Ukraine talk. I don't really follow him anymore, but James Yeager is talking about how he's going to Ukraine. If anyone knows who he is, you can Google him real quick if you don't. But he's a big 2A YouTube channel guy, and he's talking about all that sort of stuff. And I mean, so there's a lot of people beating the war drums from a lot of different communities.
Yeah, that's
all right. I got a question. Why is it so important for the United States to even be over there? I mean, we could get past okay, it's the NATO, blah, 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 but why? I mean, when we fought all the other times, there was a kind of a specific reason that we always talk about. It's why did we go after Gaddafi? Because they wanted to get off the petrodollar. Why did we go after Hussein? Because they got off the petrodollar. So why Ukraine? Why Ukraine and Russia? Why are we there? And if we know why they are there, then what can we hedge against? I mean, why does this matter to us right now? Beyond what the news is telling us.
From my completely uneducated stance, just from what I've seen, seems like our economy got tanked pretty hard. Inflation's hitting us big time. And then next thing I know, we're sanctioning and confiscating funds from oligarchs over in Russia. And I don't think you can refill America's coffers that way, but I don't know.
You get to really look at the different ways. Okay, so where are the three superpowers in the world? We got us, and then we got China, and then we got Europe.
Yeah.
Right now, it's going to be the U.S. and Europe getting into a battle again, and that allows China to sit back and kind of reap the rewards, just like the United States did in World War II and World War I. I'm just trying to talk this out. Does China want to be in this war? The answer is no. There's no reason for them to go to war right now, especially when the other two powers are wasting their money and their time and their effort to fight something to protect the U.S. dollar. Probably. I mean, everything that U.S. has ever gotten into a fight since 1972 has been to protect the dollar, right? So I'm just going to assume the same thing here. They're trying to protect the dollar. So Russia and Putin is the enemy. He's the Nazi Hitler Stalin guy of the Maoist person of the world. How is he affecting our dollar? What was he doing to affect our dollar? Was he doing anything that way? Was he creating his own petrodollar? What was going on over there?
So there is some talk about the Chinese trading in yen or wen or yuan, however you pronounce their currency.
Yeah, they just started
Russia.
With Russia. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, all right. So how does us fighting them prevent that? It seems like it pushes even more, because we said we're not going to take your half, or was it 500 million barrels of oil this year with our dollar? You're removed from our SWIFT.
I don't think it actually impacts the dollar per se. I think it actually impacts the oil, the product. And it's Russia's major export, I think, is oil and that natural gas stuff that we don't use on this side of the planet. Not to the same extent or the same way that they do. But that's that, I think what Ukraine is one of the major supply lines to Western Europe, and that's why it's such a debated hot zone. And then of course the other piece to it is that after the Berlin Wall fell, one of the first things that was talked about from NATO was there will be no eastward expansion. And then 2008, Georgia and Ukraine were both like, yeah, we'd love to join NATO, because NATO just kept expanding eastward towards Russia. And the Russians said no. And there was actually a small war in 2008 in Georgia. And as much as I feel for the Ukrainian people, I'm hoping that that's the exact same thing that's going to happen here with Ukraine. This is all not even talking about the coup in 2014, where a democratically elected pro-Russian Ukrainian president, was overthrown by the Obama regime, or the Obama administration. I'm sorry. And that's it's interesting how when we decide we want to have like some kind of regime change, like it's okay for us to do that, and then when anyone else in the world decides, like, hey, this is how we want our corner of the world to be, because this is and again, Putin is probably a sociopathic freak show like any other world leader out there. I mean,
right.
Most of them are either narcissists or sociopaths or whatever. I'm a big fan of the Tolkien quote about men are not meant to rule over other men. But when it comes to a world leader perspective or whatever, I mean, that was Putin's Cuban Missile Crisis, to have Ukraine join NATO. And I think it was Belarus, like he didn't invade Ukraine until shortly after Belarus did some kind of nuclear arms deal or something like that with NATO. And I don't have the full picture with that. But oil plays a huge part of it. And there's a lot of, Joe Biden's son, President Biden's son, is involved with the Ukrainian oil companies and everything that's flowing through. Now, what's interesting is that the United States is saying, oh yeah, no more Russian oil or whatever. But none of our NATO allies are adhering to that. So, I mean, we're kind of alone on that one. I think Germany, who's like the major importer of Russian oil, was like, oh, no, we're still going to be getting oil from them and everything. So it's an interesting thing. We provide most of NATO's military might for the rest of those countries. And honestly, I can see all of them turning tail and running if they think the United States is going to lose that war. And that's something I haven't heard anyone talk about, but all the other NATO aligned countries, if the United States starts to look like they're not going to, be able to pull through, or we lose a conflict in a World War III scenario, I could see all of them just simply backing away from us or joining with the other side. I'm just being realistic about that. I think the era of the U.S. petrodollar is done, and there's a lot of other global powers out there that are okay with that.
That's a scary thought.
Yeah.
So if the petrodollar is done, that means the dollars will start rushing back to the United States, where it's spent the most, and that's when we get the inflation. So is that why we started the war with Russia? If they said, because 500,000 or 500 million barrels of oil a year, the United States does 7 billion barrels of oil every year, and I think we're the highest. Maybe China's also there. So you're talking a fair percentage there of oil that was being spent using the U.S. dollar. That means dollars that weren't here in the United States and moving somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. So
if we cut off Russia from SWIFT and they start using the yuan or the won, that's inflation now in our system that is going to start coming back here. Everybody is getting really upset about why is Biden trying to make a deal with Iran and Venezuela, especially Venezuela. Well, it moves the U.S. dollars somewhere else, right? It doesn't come back to the United States. It hits us really hard. Also Venezuela, there's a lot of oil companies that still have a whole bunch of investment in Venezuela. They were just kind of waiting for everything to get back to the right order so they could start going back up. But these are the types of things that, why doesn't the United States become energy independent? It's because we need the dollars somewhere else. We need the dollars being spent on petrol and oil somewhere else so they don't come back here. So
that makes sense.
I heard that Russia was creating a crypto type version to move money, just like Swift moves money for all the oil purchases. It's like Swift is Visa for oil for different countries and stuff like that. They're the payment processor. They're the PayPal for all the oil in the world. And if Russia was doing that, that would be a reason why we need to hate him, right? So if that's the case, and we're just now pushing more and more people to not use the U.S. dollar for this, what does that involve for us now? That's inflation. I mean, it's inflation that we're already dealing with, but what type of inflation could it be here in the future?
Yeah.
What's up, Evan?
How we doing, gentlemen?
Doing
Good.
well.
You look good.
We're here.
That's a first.
You look like a pirate. You look like you've been out fighting on the ocean for the last 20 years.
I've been fighting something, and it's been the viruses floating through the house lately. I'm just as ragged, and I probably have scurvy. All the same.
Nice.
No, Jay, I'll tell you what, Jay, what you were just talking about, though, I caught your tweet on that a couple days ago, and I think you're dead on right. It's a realignment is what we're looking at. And all this stuff is just to prolong the empire and suck as much as they can dry, I think, before it all falls apart. The bills come due. They're just we're paying credit card bills with home equity loans. We're now borrowing
Student
money
loans.
off of.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're now borrowing money off of Uncle Marty, the loan shark at the off-track betting location. Is now what we're doing. We're just kicking the can down the road, and it's actually more a snowball rolling down the hill. And we're so far down the hill. We're actually excavating the ground out at this point, and there's only so much ground you can excavate out fast enough, I think, is where we're at.
I wouldn't doubt it, man. And everybody else was able to chime in. Evan, your take as, a dad raising a family, seeing this stuff ramp up, like, what does it make you, where do you go with that?
Hyper focus on localization.
Yeah.
Hyper focus. I mean, I'm lucky where I live. I've got great neighbors. We've got, between all of us in the neighborhood, we've got chickens, rabbits, vegetables, access to meat, plenty of land, arable if we need it to be, to use water sources, good clean water sources. I think we're at the point now where it's going to get back to almost at some point. Hopefully it won't, but I think the chances are more than they've ever been that at some point we're going to have little fiefdoms. And so I'm trying to set up my neighborhood and my network as strong as it can be. And, sometimes that means toning down my natural rhetoric with some of the neighbors, but you do what you do to survive in those situations.
I don't believe you. I don't believe you.
Yeah. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. I know when to turn it on and to turn it off. At least I think I do.
What to get back on Jay's point, and that kind of also breaks into looking at a collapse of sorts already. I mean, we're seeing the price at the pump is just astronomical. Groceries are just insane. Services are starting to be. I don't know what the supply lines are looking out in your neck of the woods, but Oklahoma's always been pretty well insulated. But it's there's been some indicators that could change soon. What's the move there, right? Like, what the hell do we do, man? Especially for those of us. I'm on the fringe of the city, but I'm certainly not rural,
I'll be 100% honest with you, Drew. I don't know what anybody does who is within what you would call the suburbs. I really don't. The supply chains, I think, in my opinion, are going to be so broken. We have local farmers, local butchers, local ranchers around this area, all within a 10 to 15 minute ride. We've got local markets. I think we're going to be pretty well insulated from it. That being said, I feel for the people, some of my friends who still live 45 minutes away, 20 minutes outside of the city, what are they going to do? I don't know. I really don't.
I think we need, like, everything that we're thinking about is we're thinking about our great grandparents and our grandparents during the Great Depression, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it'll probably kind of get like that a lot, but we have something that they didn't have, and it's been an absolute world changer, and there's going to be a depression, but it's going to change it different. It's going to act different, and this like only local thing, it doesn't have to be, and that's the internet, right? They're not going to shut off the internet, and it's really difficult because one, those companies make a lot of money, and they're really tied into passing out information. But two, it's really easy to kind of bypass the internet, right? People will figure it out. It's like a ham radio with Wi-Fi, right? So now that supply chains are kind of breaking down here, I live in Alabama, and there are chicken houses everywhere. Like Pilgrim Farms owns everything around me. And if everything were to crash, there's so many chickens just sitting there. They could be easily distributed throughout my area of 100,000 people, and where everybody has a couple backyard chickens. If somebody were to just organize that just a little bit, just threw that in the ether just a little bit, there are literally hundreds of millions of chickens in my area. So, and all it would take was a farmer to get on and go, hey, we got a whole bunch of chickens down here. I can't feed them all. I need to start selling them, right? For whatever, or trading or whatever. And even in the areas that kind of are next to the cities, these exist. I mean, Drew, in your area, you have cattle ranches like crazy, right? You've got those big stockyards, beef yards. If the supply chains really break down, those cows have to go somewhere, right?
Right.
It's going to go into your neighborhoods and stuff like that. People will figure this out because we do have the internet. We do have, even if Facebook will still be up, they're not going to shut down Facebook. People will go, hey, there's a whole bunch of cows over here, or they're not quite finished. Like, and that's going to push off a lot of this, right? I mean, maybe I'm being too hopeful here. I get it. But I mean, we're in a different age with the internet and being able to connect to things that necessarily we weren't able to connect to before.
Well, you're right. I'll give you the double-edged sword to that, though. Play devil's advocate, Jay. Okay, you're right with the internet, right? But here's the question. If we end up in a social credit score system, kind of like China, and everything is digitized, you end up in a situation where, unlike the Holodomor, let's say, right, which my grandmother was involved in and had to survive, where same mentality. Nobody believed that Stalin was going to send people in and just rip the land of all it was worth, kill anybody who had surplus or who kept anything for themselves. Nobody believed that would happen back then. They thought similar things. We'll just share. We'll get through this, right? What happens when the time comes where that farmer who says, I've got X head of cattle, I've got this many sides, I've got this many head of chicken. What happens when they just shut off his accounts? And that's what scares me, is the social credit crap that they're trying to tie into all this and freeze your bank accounts and freeze your ability to conduct that business. Then what? I mean, don't get me wrong. There'll still be some industrious people who might be able to trade. You know, I've got 52 dozen eggs for so many, pounds of beef or whatever, but it's going to be a real thorn in the side of commerce if they have the ability to shut you down with the flick of a switch, that digital switch, man. And that's what scares me. Not to be too black-pilled on it.
No, it's fine. And I'm way more white-pilled than I actually feel. Like, I'm just trying to push this idea, and see where it goes.
And I like it, by the way, brother.
The banking system wants people to use it, though. Like, one of the biggest fights that I get with my dad is like, China's the worst people in the world. It's like, we need to go get them before they get us type conversation. They're going to invade us. It's like, why would they want to? We pay their bills every day, every month, every year, right? There's no reason to invade us because they've already controlled us with TikTok and our dollar, right? They get to do whatever they control all the ores, all the minerals of the world. Why would they want to get rid of some of their power over us by shutting us out of it, right? I can understand shutting a few like us out, us five. They could get rid of us real quick, and it means nothing. But the amount of people that you're saying is so many, they lose so much power. Why would they even want to lose that much power over this many people?
Yeah, no, that's one of those things that here's the deal. But like I'll look at the playing field, right? The geopolitical playing field, and I'll think I'll have it somewhat figured out, and I'll know the next move, and then I get surprised. Like I honestly did not think that we would have gotten this far, and I say we, but I did not think the situation in Ukraine would have gotten as far as it did, right? Like I thought all the people that were saying, "Oh, Putin's gonna invade," you had White House intelligence officials and whatnot standing up doing press conferences, like saying that this was going to happen, and then I'm thinking like it's not. Then all of a sudden it does, right? So while we're sitting here looking at, China invading or not, like, what if we were wrong? Right? What if it defies rationale? What if the next move on that scale were to go against, anything that we would consider to be rational thought?
Sounds like a great. Go on.
People don't like giving. I mean, the reason that they do it is so they don't lose power. So what power are they gaining over us? And that's and it's like, well, we can just have a crazy guy, and that's what the news was trying to like push Putin. Putin over the last few months is just doing crazy things. Every now and again, he'll just pick up something and look at it for 30 minutes. He's going crazy, and that's why he's doing this. It's like, no, people don't just go crazy. People don't. Like either they are crazy and they do a whole bunch of crazy stuff and they burn up real fast, or if they've been in power for a long time, like Pooh Bear over in China, or Putin in Russia, they don't just go crazy. They do everything because they got pushed into a position. They don't attack. Like Hitler attacked because everybody was poor and they needed to go out and go reclaim all the stuff that happened. Like that was always part of the deal. These people haven't been in charge their whole lives. I mean, they haven't been charged for just a year, like Zelensky. Why people don't just go crazy like that? So why would we assume that? I guess I'm trying too hard for the white pill here.
No. I mean, I get it, man. Side note, Zelensky, the music video, is that real? Is that really him in that video? Have you guys seen that?
No idea what you're talking about.
So there's like this VH1 era looking music video, and it's these four dudes, and it's an obviously European like black and white,
Adidas
type of commercial, but they're wearing these like weird leather spandex suits, like almost like borderline, what is that, BDSM type stuff, and
German.
It's almost assuredly Zelensky in this video, in which I know he was in the music production scene and all of that prior to becoming a literal world leader. And so I don't know. Sorry to derail the conversation with that.
I have no idea. Like this is the first time hearing about that. I'm not terribly shocked. I mean,
it didn't come up on the Ron Paul report.
No, it didn't. Maybe the next episode. But it makes sense. You would have an actor or some kind of entertainer or whatever to prop them up as a president. If you were
so many actors.
Yeah,
I mean, Trudeau, Zelensky, Trump.
Yeah.
Wow. Is there more world leaders that are actors, comedian type people that they're bringing up? Is it
Dave Smith, 2024?
Yes, there we go.
There we go.
I do think, and so like I'm gonna jump on the white pill bandwagon because I think, and this is something that I hear from a lot a lot of dads. Like it's being white pilled as a father, and I know I'm new to it, so you guys are probably like rolling your eyes in the in your minds, but I mean, like I feel like I've got to be optimistic for the kid. And my wife and I, we want to start on another, hopefully within the next year. Have two and stop. That's kind of the plan. But I
plans.
Yeah, if you ever want to make God laugh, tell him your plans.
Yeah.
But I would just simply say that, if the world does collapse, there'll be a lot of pain and a lot of suffering and a lot of horrible stuff. But through all of that, the upside, the silver lining, or whatever you want to call it, I mean, for me is trying to help as many people as I possibly can. I mean, that's in my nature. That's a tenet of recovery. I think it's the good Christian thing to do. That's my deal with that. And what a golden opportunity to actually like have a United States that would be somewhat comparable to what the founders sort of envisioned for us in terms of a return to not being entangled in anything with other countries, local jurisdictions being completely decentralized and relying on themselves. We just had a conversation about 1 million chickens and cows walking down the road, and like being able to take care of that, and like the person with the coexist bumper sticker all of a sudden realizes why they need to own an AR-15, and being able to have community that is self-reliant, where people care about each other and are talking with each other again, and all of a sudden all these differences, all these petty squabbles, most of which are engineered by the state or the corporate cathedral in the first place. All these differences of opinion, they all of a sudden they fall by the wayside when we start to realize that what's really important is, family, life, liberty, property, all that sort of stuff. So even though there's much destruction, there's some hard times coming ahead. I mean, what a golden opportunity to rebuild. And that's the part I think that a lot of people like, there's a lot of folks out there that have this like Walking Dead, like doomsday prepper fantasy. And like, I think the more important aspect of that a lot of people miss is that, hey, there's like community, and there's like people out there to help, and there's like stuff to build, and like we can build it in a way that we think is right and is just, because quite frankly, this is my perspective as a libertarian. We have, the side of ethics and morals backing us. Like I do legitimately think we are morally and ethically in the right. And so having an opportunity to rebuild the system like that. I mean, let's pray that it never actually gets there. But if it does, what a golden opportunity to be able to rebuild society the way it was intended to be, the way God intended it to be, the way the founders did, et cetera, et cetera. That's just kind of my white pill train right there. And that's the kind of education I would want to give my kid. I would want to teach him about what actually matters. Love, patience, kindness, dignity, honesty, open-mindedness, willingness, integrity, all these other values that recovery gave me that I think are also a part of libertarianism.
Yeah, so for sure.
That's my 2 cents.
Well, I got a question. Obviously, we always go to the worst case scenarios. We talk about Holodomor. We talk about what happened to the Weimar Republic. Talk about the inflation in that was Zimbabwe and Venezuela. What did people do to survive these great catastrophes? I mean, there were some that were bad, but nobody talks about them because people was like, you know what, we'll just get up and do it. Are there any good stories like that in our history that we know about where it's like, wow, that sucked, but we made it? Especially out in Appalachia out there, you, Jason, Evan.
I think every story of collapse has that, doesn't it? I mean, that's survivorship bias, right? My biggest thing when we talk about the worst case scenario is that, and I think we're all guilty of this, is that we could all do a little better job of putting the alternative structures and systems into place before it happens. That's the one thing that I'd like to see a little more of. And I'm more guilty of that than anybody. You know, like I said, I'm really focused on the local aspect of it now, but I'd like that once I have that, you know, where I consider it at least reliable and a little more down pat, I'd like to broaden that a little bit in whatever form that may take. Now, you know, I'm not a finance expert. I don't know if I'm certainly not a Bitcoin maximalist. I don't think Bitcoin solves everything. Yeah. So, but I'd like to see some structures already in place for that, for what I believe to be an eventuality. But if I'm wrong, hey, all the better. So yeah, when you talk about like the survivor stories, yeah, people did what they had to do. I just think it would be a lot easier to do what we have to do if we are prepared for that. The old Boy Scout mentality.
Absolutely. So what lessons do they want to teach? The
biggest one modern day, I think what you're getting at, Jay, is going to be the how to conduct commerce aspect of it. Because correct. I think rather than relying on rugged individualism, which is what tends to be our go-to, I think there will come a point where actually more of a collective mentality will benefit us a lot more. So the commerce aspect of it, and you know, and without the negative connotation of it, the tribal aspect of it, you know, finding people that are of like mind who do think the way we do, and prepping those systems that are in place for that eventual survival. I mean, you could prepare as much as you want individualistically, and if you prepare enough, you just got a big target on your back, right?
Yep. Yeah, like all of my gardens and my chickens, they make a pretty big bullseye on my back right now. Right?
Yeah, right, exactly.
So
and
it's like I need to know my neighbors well enough to make sure that they're doing well. And yeah, obviously. Yeah. But I mean, I'm looking for stories to go, hey, this is what we did. Hey, this worked for us. Tuck, do you got any stories like that?
Well, I mean, I've said it. You know that I'm an individualist. I believe in the strength of the individual, but I've always been of a mind and to try to let people, make them understand that it's going to take, like what Evan was talking about, it's going to take that community. My people survived because of community. Okay. You know, during the Great Depression, even though in our area, they probably didn't even realize that there was much of a depression. It was already a depressed area. So those systems they were quite prepared to weather that kind of thing because those systems were already in place. You already traded with your neighbor. You already did these things. You knew who to go to need to get this fixed or this made or whatever. And you bartered. You know, I've told the story about my great grandmother. You know, she bartered. You know, they had dairy cows. They had a small dairy herd. They sold milk. She bartered eggs. She bartered butter, geese, whatever to trade for, because you can't make everything. That's why I try to tell people, it's like, I'm ready. I'm like, are you really ready? Because can you make clothes? Have you got the ability to do that? Have you got the ability to make shoes?
Right.
You know, how long do you expect your shoes to last? You know, you have to have that. And the best example that the best example I can give is you can be the biggest individual out there, the toughest guy, with the most knowledge on how to survive. But even the mountain men had to come out of the mountains once a year and trade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay. What is the Bible like? Is there any stories in the Bible that could help with this question?
Oh, lots.
Yeah,
lots of them. Yeah, I mean,
Old Testament's full of it.
Well, there's Old Testament and New Testament.
True.
You know, you look at the book of Acts. Look at the entire book of Acts, and the way that community, the way that they conducted themselves.
That's true.
And
but even going back to Leviticus, Jay, Jason, if you go back to Leviticus, that whole book is guidelines on how to build a nation from the ground up.
Yes.
What to do, how to rotate your crops, what things to avoid in nature that could kill you, even if you don't understand why. How to take care of the land, how to take care of your neighbor. Yeah, really, Leviticus is a blueprint for exactly what you're talking about, Jay.
Okay. Yeah, it is.
That's what it is.
I'm just going to come right out here and say that I know where the Narcotics Anonymous meeting is at the end of the world. So I've got that.
That's right. That's right.
That's great. So how does that spread? I guess in my area, people know these stories pretty well. Like they were raised on them. Maybe they never knew how to connect them to the real world, but once things happen, they've done it. They've read the Bible so many times, gone to church so many times that it would be second nature to go, oh, I know where this is. Just like you guys did exactly as soon as I asked the question. What else? Yeah, go ahead.
I want to put something out here for this. I think, something that's often lost in the liberty community, and I don't know why it is. I don't know if it's for me. Whenever it comes up for me, it's usually an ego thing. Like I think that I'm that rugged individualist. I think that I'm that person that's going to survive solo. And the reality is I'm going to be dead inside 2-3 weeks if I try to function that way. It's got to be about community. I think what often doesn't come across the lips of a lot of libertarians when they're discussing things like this is charity. And that's one of the ways you build up community is by being charitable. Because I'll tell you what, I mean, I've got 10, 15 other houses on my block or whatever. There's an HOA here. I'm on the HOA because for me, it's about increasing property values or maintaining property values. The president of the HOA lives right across the street from me, and that's a little old lady, lives alone. And, we started talking about firearms and stuff like that. And it turns out, her son got her a little 22 for home defense. Not what I would pick personally, but you know what? If
something's better than nothing.
Something is better than nothing. And here's the deal is if she's going to have that 22, you're going to be damn sure that I'm going to take her to the range and show her how to use it. And I'm going to make sure she has reliable ammo. So even during the pandemic, when it was at its height and ammo prices were at its worst, I was able to give her a few boxes of like high quality 22 that'll go bang every single time. And like little things like that. I didn't ask for anything in return. I didn't sell it to her. It was purely a just trying to be, kind and saying like, hey, if you're going to do something, this is the proper way to do it. And I think that those acts of kindness and that kind of charity with other people, sharing meals with people, to an extent, not to the place where anyone's putting themselves out necessarily, like I can't give away my stuff to the point where I'm going to be putting myself or my family in harm's way or in trouble or whatever. But there's a lot to be said for charity and acts of kindness with other people. And the reality is, here we are. I don't know, maybe somebody's listening to this podcast, this episode 6 months from now, and like the United States is a nuclear wasteland at that point. but here's the thing, like right now, March 19th, 2022, all the Walmarts are still open. Go out there, buy a bunch of bags of rice, buy a bunch of beans, buy a bunch of cans of stuff. Go on Amazon.com, buy a bunch of heirloom seeds, learn how to plant them, save those for like, after the next frost or whatever. And like literally just start stockpiling food, medical supplies, basic stuff like ibuprofen. I mean, you'd be amazed if you're in a disaster. Like, so I have followed some of the stuff with like, countries like Venezuela and Cuba briefly, like just sort of in the background. If you talk to some of the people that have survived some of those events, they will tell you that like little basic everyday things that we take for granted, which are currently plentiful in the United States, yes, maybe a little bit more expensive, stockpiling those things and then using those for trade, barter, or charity down the road will go a long way. And personally, I vote that we replace the US dollar with ammunition. I think ammunition is a fantastic.
No, that's going to be the new dollar.
There you go. There you go.
What things are good to stock and trade? Everybody talks about lead and brass, right?
This is antithetical for a person in recovery, but alcohol.
Alcohol.
Alcohol is a great thing to stockpile
For sure.
because it does not go
Buy
bad.
the $10 bottle. Buy the $10 bottle whiskey. Buy the $7 bottle. Stockpile it. It's good for barter. It's good for trade.
That said, if you're
it's also good for medicinal.
If you're struggling with your alcoholism, probably not the best suggestion in the world, but I mean, you should see what prison inmates will do for a carton of cigarettes or a couple of smokes. I mean, tobacco is another thing that's pretty good. I mean, you could those nicotine lozenges people use to quit smoking. When somebody's gone like a month or two without any nicotine or whatever, you'd be surprised what they would do for one of those. Basic things like ibuprofen, just everyday medications. You want to get some anti-diarrhea stuff for sure, because you got to think about it. People are going to be drinking nasty, water that maybe they haven't properly boiled or sterilized or anything like that. Like people are going to be eating rations and crap. That's going to mess people's guts up. So getting anti-diarrhea drugs or stuff that's going to calm your stomach is pretty good. You can get human grade antibiotics from pet stores because they have to use the same stuff for fish.
Yep. Exactly.
So researching that stuff.
God bless Tractor Supply.
That being said, it's
good having a cousin that's a veterinarian.
Yeah.
Yes.
I will say this: you gotta know what antibiotics to take for what situation, because you can seriously mess yourself up with antibiotics if you don't know what you're doing. Plus, they have to be stored a certain way as well. So medications are important, tourniquets are important, bandages, everyday band-aids, just everyday items that we take for granted in a survival situation or rebuilding community situation or a Walking Dead situation, whatever you want to label it. Those everyday things that we take for granted right now are going to be absolutely, they're going to be worth their weight in gold.
They're going to be currency.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to be. Yeah. They're going to be currency.
Yeah.
Hey, Tuck, how much salt do you have?
I'm not going to tell you that, man.
How much should people have?
I'm not going to advertise that.
How much should people have?
Look, here's the deal. You get as much salt as you can store. Salt is something that you can't. Salt is something you can't produce. Okay, you can't. If you live closer to the coast, you might be able to set up. You might be able to do some kind of desalination. You might be able to do something with seawater, but you have to mine salt. You can raise cane. You can raise sorghum to make sugar. You can do those things, but salt, it's got to be dug out of the ground. So it's going to be a commodity. A real commodity.
For sure.
So you need to get as much
preserving
salt. Preserving meat, preserving vegetables, the whole thing. And salt is a necessity. We have to have it.
Yep.
We have to have it. So
crazy aside,
you need to get as much as you can hold. You need to get as much as you can hold. You were talking about the Walmart earlier. My suggestion to people is, and what we're fortunate enough around here to have it, is look in your area and see if there are any Mennonites or Amish communities. They usually have a store, and they have a public store, and that store sells bulk. And I'm not talking about your regular Morton salt. I'm talking about you can get 50-pound bags of Morton salt. You can get 25-pound bags of pinto beans. You can get 25-pound bags of northern beans or navy beans. You can get those kinds of things there, and at a really good price. Now, not everybody has access to that, but check it out. Check your area out and see if there's something there close, because you can get those items. A lot of that stuff for oats, rice, stuff that you can store dry. And you can go on Amazon. You can buy the 5-gallon buckets that are food grade that have the seal. You can buy the package for the desiccants to put in there. We use bag liners, plastic bag liners, and store stuff that way. That's a good resource right now if you have that in your area close by.
What is salt good for?
Salt's good for it. We were just talking about preserving. But you need salt in your diet. It's a necessity. It's a necessary mineral that we all need. And so, in trace amounts.
Good luck not going into atrial fibrillation if you don't have any salt in your diet.
Exactly. That's right. So
Yeah.
and another thing too is that a lot of people skip over is find iodine.
Ooh.
Iodine's good for water storage. It's got a whole lot of good uses. So
yes,
iodine's another thing.
All right, here's another one. If you could go, they used to sell them at hardware stores like Ace, and it's potassium permanganate, pot perm. It's used to drop out iron in water filtration type settings. But it's also an oxidizer. What else is an oxidizer? Bleach. So you can use it in the same type of things as bleach. So when you have a cut or something like that, you could actually use it to disinfect a cut. When you want to use water, all you have to have is, I think, 5 grams. So it's just 5 little beads of this pot perm to neutralize and disinfect water. And the thing is, when you do it, it doesn't taste like bleach. It actually tastes like clean water. So a 5-pound bucket of this pot perm could literally, I think I calculated, treat 30,000 gallons of water.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's going to be the most immediate need in a disaster case scenario.
Yeah.
Water.
I have a story.
Yep.
Let's hear it.
I have a story. So, I've talked about my background was largely in maintenance. So I was working for a management company, and we had a subdivision there behind where the office was at. And I started getting calls at like 5, 6 o'clock on a Saturday morning. I had the call phone for that weekend that, their water was off. So I asked the guys, like, can you go across I'll try to make this as short as possible. But I asked the guy to go across the hallway. Now this was on the other side of town from our office, and check with his neighbor before I came up to make sure there wasn't a problem somewhere else. Well, while he was doing that, I started getting other calls from all over town for some of the properties that we managed at the water. Well, we had a water main bust there in town. Old system, had a major water main bust. A fourth Bowling Green was out of water. So I started getting phone calls off the hook and people complaining about. I'm like, look, first of all, we don't supply your water. You need to be calling BGMU, the municipal utilities, to find out what's going on. We're trying to figure it out. Everything's clogged. The phone lines are clogged. The internet's clogged. Nobody can find out what's going on. But anyhow, short story long, I figured out in just a few short, like 3-4 hours there, that within the first couple of days, people will kill each other over a bottle of water.
Oh yeah.
That's just it.
Oh yeah.
I had a lady call me. It was like, I've got 3 kids here. What am I supposed to do? And I'm like, ma'am, there is a convenience store 2 blocks from where you live. My suggestion is to go get a case of water. It didn't bode well. I got a lot of phone calls. I got a lot of call in on me that morning.
Yeah.
I was like, common sense has got to rule the day at some point. If you're that bad up, you've only been out of water for an hour at your apartment. If you're that bad off, maybe you need to, go down a couple blocks and get some water. But I figured out real quick. I told my wife that day, I was like, when this goes down, when this system goes down, and it's going to happen, and this was 3-4 years, this was 6 or 7 years ago now. I said, people will kill each other over a bottle of water within
100%.
a week.
100%. Look at the fist fights. Look at the fist fights over toilet paper we saw.
Oh, toilet paper.
Over toilet paper.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't have an extra napkin laying around or a couple of T-shirts you don't need? And people are fighting each other at Walmart over toilet paper. It was absurd. It's absurd.
I like that T-shirt.
Right, yeah, right. My favorite one. Crazy aside here, my family has heraldry going back to England from like the 900s, and the reason we have it, my family used to go out.
That's a weird flex.
Trust Trust me, they gambled it and drank it all away. That's why we became West Virginia pig farmers a couple hundred years later. So there's no
Nothing wrong
flexing
with
in
West
it.
Virginia pig farmers.
No, not unless you're the alcoholic kind.
Isn't
But-
that the way
Well,
to
that's
get
true.
rid of a dead body or something? Is pig farms?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
I have more
And I am-
stories about that.
And I am
So-
sure some of that went on the family property. I am sure of that. But so they used to go out into the bay, collect the salt, and they used to salt the meats for the crown. That was how my family got their heraldry going back a long time ago. Just as a quick aside. But the survival stuff, the water storage, that is going to bring people to more than fisticuffs. And without some kind of long-term solution. But you know what? You're exactly right, Tuck. The system has created these people who are completely reliant on the system. And
Yep.
nobody is taking the steps to become self-sufficient under a system that not only doesn't encourage it, but actually discourages you from becoming self-sufficient.
Yes, exactly.
So
Well,
That's it.
the discourage though is because it's easy, right?
yeah,
It's not
easy.
because we're being forced. Well, here it is though. If it's easy, that means it's easy to actually do, right? To treat water isn't that difficult. To
It's
make
not.
our own food isn't that difficult. All this stuff isn't actually difficult. So how do we push it forward? Like how do we expand it out and make it better for it so that zone
Yeah.
of that sphere of influence that's around you is
Yeah.
far enough out that people aren't coming after you, they're going at the
Agree.
edges somewhere else. So how do
Yeah.
we do
Agree.
That's going to be a real issue.
That's the question, though, because you're right. If you go up to your neighbors now and you talk about this, some of them are going to look at you like you're an absolute lunatic. They'll call CPS on you for the way you think. So the question becomes, how do you implement these things far enough out that they become fruitful when the time comes without drawing any attention to yourself in the interim? That's the real question. Because obviously the answer to your question, Jay, is teaching the skills. But the question is a matter, really, what it boils down to is timing. How do we get the timing right?
Well,
You're on mute, Jay.
is it really teaching? Because in the end, it to me, it's we're specialized people because it works, right? We don't need to know everything. We like to know everything because we're libertarian, autistic idiots, right?
It's true.
But most people don't need to know everything. So how do we have to really teach everything, or do we just need to understand where to get the information from? Wouldn't that
I don't
be a
know.
lot easier step to do than just
Is
teach
it
everybody?
teaching? Is it teaching or is it convincing? And if it's convincing,
It's convincing.
And my thing on that is, if it is convincing, if you aren't convinced at this point, what am I going to say to convince you? That's my question.
I think necessity is the mother of invention. I think a lot of
I
those
agree.
people, I think a lot of those people that would call CPS on you during like stable times, the second that, SHTF, they're gonna be like, oh, wait a minute, maybe I need to go to this guy because he might actually know his stuff. Also, somewhere in the middle of this thing, I know there's a joke about libertarians collecting rainwater, so I just want to think about that real quick. I don't know what the joke is, but it's there. So
yeah, and that's my question about timing. Do you know what I mean? It's a matter of, like you said, Ash, that same person who's going to look at you sideways now, 6 months, 9 months, whenever shit hits the fan, they're going to look at you like you need to save me. I just don't know. And with, like Jay, what you said, with wanting to have those spheres of influence already be in place and have that, if you want to call it a safety net, whatever you'd like to call that, wanting to have that in place ahead of time, that's where the issue of convincing comes in. Because you're right. I don't know that we need to teach.
It's not going to take months. It's going to be.
I think you're right.
A week. It's
All right.
Be a week.
So there's a name that's kind of come up a lot. Well, I wouldn't say a lot, but I've heard it a lot for some reason. And that's a Julius Caesar, somebody who just kind of rushes in and saves the world. And there tend to be people that had armies or whatever. They had excess information. Well, let's not even use Caesar. Let's use Schindler, right? Schindler had the resources to keep people working and all that stuff, so they weren't taken out of the system. So if we are these people that are enlightened and we understand that the world is crashing, and we understand that we need to keep salt, we need to disinfect water, how do we become the shepherds? How do we help? Like, there's going to be a lot of people that are upset. What's the first thing you do to trigger them, to get them out of that daze? What do you do? Like when the neighbors start saying, hey, I don't know what to do. How do you handle that? How do you push that forward?
That's the $64 million question, brother.
That's a tough one.
And that's why, Ash, what you were talking about earlier, it might not be that the timing is right now to go to your neighbors to show them how to store and create potable water, the importance of, prepping and all that, but it might be the time now to establish a trust relationship with them. Ash, like you said, even if it's just, a couple boxes of ammunition, if it's helping your neighbor cut the grass, so that when the timing, because that's what it gets down to, is that trust issue. Our society, trust is broken down almost completely. And that's usually a marker of collapse, is internally trust is breaking down.
Yeah, you have to go to your door with a gun, right?
Living a biblical life, living
Yep.
a biblical life or living a principled life spiritually means being a good steward, a good caretaker, and a good neighbor of all of that sort of stuff. And I'm going to put something else out there. I mean, like, have any of y'all ever watched some of the 2020 footage in like some of the more urban areas of like people getting pulled out of their homes and stuff during the riots and everything? I mean, it's absolutely insane. But here's the deal: it's like if my neighborhood, well, I'm not going to go into a whole heck of a lot of detail, but it's not a bad idea to have enough firearms to be able to arm other people in your neighborhood.
No.
You're going to have to. You're going to have to defend. It's setting up your communities. You're going to have to be able to defend it.
Yes. And here's the other. I mean, yeah, it kind of goes back to this idea of privatizing everything, where it's like, okay, this is our property, and we have our own little individual fiefdoms in it. What is it? The phrase is like 10 million Liechtensteins or something like that.
Right.
But I mean, like, the deal is like, if everyone's seeing the reports that like there's, going to be local disturbances in the area, there's going to be riots, there's going to be, the Walmart is now out of toilet paper for weeks now. And so people are robbing each other over rolls of toilet paper. Right. That's the point where you kind of, you have to go to your neighbor and be like, hey, are you going to be okay? Like, and you've already established a working rapport with them where they know you're a good guy and a decent human being and all of that sort of stuff. And you know what? Honestly, I mean, so I've lived in this spot now. I bought a townhouse 1 month before the pandemic started. And there's not a person I pass by in this neighborhood when I go for a walk. I walk almost every day. I walk the dog. I walk with my wife. We're taking our kid around and everything like that. There's not a single person I pass by that I don't smile and wave at. There's not a single person that I pass by. Like if I'm close enough where I say, hey, how's it going? How's your day going? Or whatever. And they get to know my face and they get to see me smiling and they get to like, I build that rapport with people just simply with like ordinary every single day interactions, just being kind, courteous, upfront or whatever. And like it's to the point where honestly the weird drug dealer kid that lives down the street, even he will like be like, oh hey, how's it going, whatever. Like when from everyone else he's like kind of like always got his head down and like trying to stay out of the obvious limelight or whatever, except when his idiot friends show up blasting their radio at their car radio at 11 o'clock at night. But like even the local drug dealer kid, like, I can smile and wave at, and he's like, oh yeah, how's it going? And he loves my dog and he knows my wife and whatever, not too well, but it's just having that familiarity.
Well, that's the building. That's the building of it. Mm-hmm. And Jay, you want to go back
what's the easiest way to make a friend out of a neighbor?
I don't know that you need to. You need to.
Not friend. How about acquaintance and building
fair
trust? What is the best way? Is it you go help them? The answer is actually no. The best way is to ask your neighbor for help.
The Ben Franklin effect.
Yeah, the best way to do it is that you go
ask for a small favor.
Favor, and then all of a sudden there's this weird connection. One of the things that I was doing in the neighborhood, because I was just helping people out, and I've been trying to start my own business, so I got extra time sometimes, is I was walking around the neighborhood helping people fix stuff because they asked me, but I was walking around the neighborhood with tools in my hand. And then because I was walking around the neighborhood with tools in my hand, more and more neighbors started asking me, hey, I've got this curtain that fell down. Could you fix this for me? I can't do it right now. And it just kind of snowballed, and I met half the neighbors just doing this. The other way that I met most of the other neighbors was right before dusk. My family and I just go walk around the neighborhood, and then we say hi, we wave at everybody in the neighborhood. And we did that especially during COVID. And me, the introvert, my wife that's also kind of introverted, we knew more about the neighborhood than the extroverts in the neighborhood, just because we walked around and just waved and smiled at people. So it's these weird little things that you do, these little, it's almost like hypnosis type things that you do with the people around you. You show people that you can help them, and you ask them to help you. And it changes the whole dynamic of the people in your neighborhood. People start talking to each other once that starts happening. It's weird and easy and crazy how easy it is. How easy it is. I said that. But that's what it's all it takes is just to get out into the neighborhood and talk to people. That's
shoveling snow and helping with garbage is another couple of
I love shoveling snow down here in Alabama. It works so great.
You know what's funny though? This was something that was it wasn't even, I don't even want to say common knowledge. This was built into American society for 150 years, 200 years.
Yeah.
And now, you know, we talk about how best to do this legitimately for a reason, because it's lost. And, you know, not to get too black pill. I tend to be more on the black pill side. Everybody knows that. I think that's by design. And we've created a society that, you know, the family is no longer important. The community is no longer important. You know, the extended community is no longer important. And that makes it much, much easier for, whereas the structure used to be in place that it was immediate family, community, church, civic organizations, that took care of all those, you know, those obligations, if you want to call them, or whatever you want to signify that as. But now that ripping away of those structures has allowed the ultimate power structure to step in, and that's government. And that's why I think they've had such an easy pass over the last 40 to 50 years into our communities and into our houses.
Here's the white pill, though. I think over the last 2 years, during the COVID regime, trust in government and those, you know, state institutions and the corporate cathedral has been severely eroded.
Agree.
That's a huge white pill. And that's a huge opportunity for us.
That's the key, though. You're right. It's opportunity, Ash. That's the key.
No, I agree with that. I see that myself. You know, a lot of people have come around after all this, but also too, there's been a lot of damage done too.
For sure.
Evan, going back to what you were talking about, you know, and I'll get on my faith and my belief kick here, but division is the biggest hammer in the devil's toolbox. That's his most effective tool. They don't want us unifying in any type sort of way, and so the society that's been created has gotten us away from that, and that's all by design. It's all by design. And what you said was right. We were as a country, we were kind of based on those beliefs of that community, the family, the church, the community, the neighborhood, and it's not something that's lost here. You know, a lot of what you guys talk about is, I won't say that I'm ignorant of it, but it's foreign to me because I'm still insulated here pretty well. You know, a lot of people that are my neighbors, their families go back in this area as far as mine do. And so a lot of those connections have never been really lost. And it's as being one of the neighborhood go-to guys, it's a good thing to be able to do those things, Jay, like you're talking about.
No, it's a great thing.
I used to really feel good when people called and was like, hey, can you come fix this? I need help with that. I got somebody that wants me to come and look at some concrete that they need in a barn done. Just some little something, because you can't get people to come out and do small work. So making those connections and keeping those connections is very, very, very important.
That brings up another good point, by the way. A lot of people, they think that when if it's the end of the world as we know it, or SHTF situation or whatever, I'll just head for the hills. And what they don't realize is that the hills already have people. And they don't want you.
Yeah.
They don't want you there unless you have something useful or can contribute. Or
you have to be able to. You're going to have to contribute something.
Yeah.
You got to have to bring something to the table.
It was interesting. Or property or whatever.
Twitter's such a shithole, but it's also such a great place too.
No, it's not. This is the best place in the world.
Yeah. So
it's the best insane asylum online.
One of my mutuals, and I won't call him out, but he's from Venezuela. He's from Venezuela. And he DM'd me one time. I was in a discussion talking about some prep and some different things, not really giving too much information, but just kind of giving some suggestions to people. And he's like, he was Venezuela, he was rural, he was agricultural. And he said, don't think for 1 second you're going to be insulated out there. He said, because they're going to push out. He said, they'll push out of the cities. They'll push out of the urban areas. He said, you better have a community built, and you better be ready to defend what you have, and anybody that you let in better be able to contribute. And, because he experienced it, they lived it, firsthand. He said, I've seen it. I experienced it. He said, you need to be prepared for that, because it will happen. So
by the way,
in a collapse situation.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's happening without even a collapse situation. All metropolitan major cities or whatever all have negative population growth. It's all like people that live in cities or whatever. You have I shouldn't say negative population growth. Locals leave cities at a slower rate than new people flux in, but you have a lot of transient people basically coming in with cities, and so they're coming out in the surrounding neighborhoods, countryside, the suburbs, and everything like that. I am going to shamelessly plug in my book. Drew knows exactly what I'm about to talk about here. So I wrote the 12 strides and the 12 group norms for liberty and recovery. Just turned in the final part of it, the final draft to the publisher, Champion Books. But it's basically the libertarian version of the 12 steps and 12 traditions. So it talks about recovery, it talks about libertarianism, and a huge part of recovery is building communities. A huge part of recovery is acts of charity, living according to spiritual principles. I would argue biblical principles, but it is broad enough that it can apply to a wider audience than that. But it's hopefully going to be in time for the Libertarian Party convention in Reno. So, keep an eye out for
That's
it.
awesome, Ash.
12 strides and 12 group norms for liberty and recovery. So just put
that's awesome.
Shameless.
That's awesome.
I got more questions. This one is more about just trying to direct people that are listening. Like right now, what would you say is something that people want to learn or should learn about, and where's the place to go to learn it? Drew?
Oh, for me, I stay in my wheelhouse pretty much, but I would think that coming up, anything engineering wise would be a good idea. I heard somebody say a long time ago.
Oh God!
I'm not trying to boost your ego.
Can you see Jay's head inflate? Did you see it get bigger?
I heard, and this is a slick idea. I don't know if it's possible or not, but if you could find a way to download all of Wikipedia and put it on a flash drive, and just have that shit, like in the event that everything went down, you'd have that to fall back on. But I think just, understanding basic mechanical principles, even just understanding like how maybe, basic chemistry, things of that line, that's what's going to come into play. That's what's going to matter, right? How broad is your level of ingenuity that you can take, something outside of the blueprint and then make it fit to inside of the blueprint. I think that's kind of like the big thing, adapting.
All right, Tuck, you got one?
It's going to sound kind of silly. I had a guy give me a complete set of volumes. Sears and Roebuck put it out. It had to have been in the 50s, late 40s. And
Which
it was
Roebuck?
basically Sears and Roebuck. It was
It was right next to his high
basically
school yearbook in the 50s.
Yeah, exactly. That's it, because I'm old. So they're basically handyman's encyclopedias.
Oh, nice.
And it's got everything in there.
Yep.
Some of the most simplistic repairs, building projects out of the most simplistic materials. Finding things like that. And you were talking about flash drives. I'm big on finding stuff in hardback.
Amen.
Books, instruction manuals. Hey, here's something that doesn't get discussed a whole lot, and was something that I thought about looking into. Books on gunsmithing.
Mm-hmm.
Repairs.
You just print those, right?
Yeah.
3D printer.
Yeah. Well, there's still going to be a lot of old antiques out there floating around. That's going to need a firing pin. It's going to need this. It's going to need that.
Yep.
Yeah. No.
It's going to need repairs. You're going to have busted pipes. You're going to have things that you're going to need to know how to fix. Jay, you're showing pictures of your boxes that you built for your herbs and for your water collection. There's things in there like that that have, diagrams and blueprints and measurements and all that kind of stuff. Find those things. Another thing is try to find a complete volume set of the Foxfire books. Foxfire books are some great information on some of the old ways of doing things, from everywhere from canning to food preservation to water collection to, how to properly prepare chickens after you kill them. To, it's basically taken from, from Appalachia. But that's and people that have heard about that or know what I'm talking about. But the Foxfire books, look for those, a complete set of those. A lot of good information in there and instruction. I'm more of leaning toward the old ways. I still think about my grandparents, my great grandparents, all those, and think about how they did things. And the newer stuff's great. We need to look at that. We need to look at building those systems, but also too, you need to also look at the old ways of doing things that we've lost.
Is that similar to like the Prairie Home Companions and all that?
Yeah. Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's exactly the answer I was looking for. Was stuff like that.
My grandpa on my mom's side had a 8th grade education, but he knew how to smoke meat in a smokehouse that was made out of wood planks and had a dirt floor in it. Okay, I don't know how to do that.
Right.
I want to learn how to do that. Those things have been lost.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So that's the kind of stuff that's in those types of books that will kind of guide you.
Just a side note, I looked it up on Amazon and they got the Foxfire books on there. I might buy a couple, man.
You and me both.
I don't know how many volumes that there is, but
I got a couple Prairie Home Companions and how to build log cabins and all that stuff. But yeah, anything analog like that, Tuck, you're 100% right. That knowledge right there. And again, I'll go back to, I don't even know that it's necessarily lost, like it's just happenstance. I think it was purposely taken out of us by the consumerist society we live in. But I think it's going to come back. You're right. You're absolutely right.
It doesn't matter if it was evil or just stupidity.
The end result is the same.
The end result's the same. So
the end
here it
result's
is,
the same.
and the job is like, okay, we got new problems. Let's go back through the stuff. So let's go find more stuff to go look through. Ash,
you know that meme. You know that meme. Modern solutions require, or modern problems require modern solutions. Yeah. It's actually incorrect. It's modern problems require old solutions.
I would say the one skill that I really need to develop is probably my green thumb. And I was just talking to the wife earlier today about building a small garden in the backyard for tomatoes, cucumbers. And I think the big thing to keep in mind for people is heirloom seeds. Rather than buying just any sort of seeds. Like you can't necessarily just go to like Home Depot or
just seeds. Just go buy seeds. I have an addiction. I go every time I go to Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, I put seeds in the grocery cart, and my wife goes, "What are you doing? Stop! You don't even plant these. They just sit in the shelf somewhere." I'm like, I can't help it. This is my thing. I just have to go buy them. And usually I don't buy them, and then I wait until I'm by myself, and then I sneak them in, and I go put them on the shelf again. But yes, seeds. Go get a whole bunch of seeds because they get to make more seeds later if you plant them right.
Yeah, get them off your local farmer.
Heirloom seeds are good because heirloom seeds are generational, where you can use the seeds.
You can collect the seeds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can use the seeds from one crop and use them again and again.
Most seeds will do that. Actually, they have bred. Well, no, they bred some of them out. But go ahead. If you get a packet that says Serrano peppers and you grow them, you save them, and they didn't say heirloom, most of the time they'll still grow again. So yes, they have done a whole bunch of cool tricks, especially Monsanto, to make sure that they don't breed again. But most of them don't. They're just farmers that are just collecting seeds to sell.
My wife
go through. Go ahead.
My wife figured out that you can sprout pinto beans that you just buy in the store.
Really?
Yes, they will germinate.
Wow.
They will do it. She was like, all this.
Yeah.
She was like, you can just take that. She just tried it as an experiment. She's working out of state, been away from home for 3 months now, but she started a bunch of stuff where she's at. She's like, I got some pinto beans going. She said, and I just tried them right out of the bag I bought at Walmart, and they sprouted.
Yeah. And that's how you get potatoes. You go get potatoes, and then you leave them in your closet, your pantry, until they start growing. And then you cut them up where they start growing, and you put them in the ground. Same thing with the garlic. When the garlic all of a sudden starts shooting a little green shoot out the top of it, we'll go put it in the sun for a couple more days and then go put it in the ground. Onions. After you're done, green onions especially, don't use the bottom part. After you're done cooking with the green onion, go take that white part, go put it in the ground. It will grow again like 2 or 3 or 4 times before it dies. You could do that over and over. There's
lettuce does the same thing.
Celery is a good one. Yep. Celery, romaine hearts, all these stuff that usually you don't even want to use because it's white and you're like, well, I'd rather have the green stuff. Save it, put it in water for a little bit, and all of a sudden you'll see the roots start growing out, and just put it in your garden and it'll grow again and you get to go reuse it. A lot of the foods, especially the vegetables that we buy from the grocery store, you could use over and over and over again just by putting it in some dirt.
Yeah.
Go learn these things.
Yeah, I don't have much of a green thumb. My mother does, and she lives locally, and my father-in-law does. So I'm looking to tap into that knowledge. I would say that
here's the best thing about that.
Yeah,
here's the best thing about that. Nature already works without you. It doesn't matter how green or brown your thumb is; it just works. So just go do it.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a lot of truth to that. But either way, I mean, I'll end up talking with them about it.
All right. So where's a good source that you would like to think that to go learn to be a better green thumb?
Like I said, I mean, I'm going to go with family. And of course, nature does take care of a lot of it. Something I was going to throw out there that a lot of people don't really think about in terms of like prepping and survivalist stuff is this idea of entertainment. Not a lot of people think about like what are things people can do for entertainment. And if you're talking like an electrical breakdown situation. Actually stockpiling books and board games and things like that. Survivalist books, there's like a million of them out there. I mean, getting a good one. It's funny. So when I first got sober, I was 21 years old, and my favorite thing to read was not actually any sort of recovery literature. It was Max Brooks' The Zombie Survival Guide. And it's an actual survival guide, quote unquote, except it talks about like surviving the zombie apocalypse. And it's a campy, joking, like sort of whatever, but it's reading that just kind of gave me sort of the mindset for a lot of stuff in my life, you know. So having something just like entertaining and stupid and like not, you know, that's kind of geared along what we're trying to do here or what we're trying to talk about, but like not very serious, I think is pretty important. And I think being able to find resources that are sort of lighter on the side of stuff, like I think is going to be very good for people's overall just sort of mental health. Riding out the apocalypse, because we're going to be seeing some pretty horrible stuff over the course of our lifetimes as we do survive through stuff. And I think that having stuff that keeps the mood light and keeps people hopeful and optimistic and not focusing on their depressions and anxieties and traumas and substance use is going to be really damn important.
There's a reason sailors sang shanties, right?
Yeah. So that would be my 2 cents. Oh, one more resource. A good pill book. Get a good pill book, because a pill book, if you come across any sort of medications, you'll be able to use a recent pill book to be able to identify anything you might come across. Also, if you have a group of people that you're working with, not a bad idea to have a nurse or a doctor, especially a nurse, because they'll know how to take care of a lot of stuff that a doctor might not be, because they're hyper specialized in one thing. So,
yeah,
Evan, different question.
Sure, go ahead. I had my answer all set up for that one. My big project this year I want to get into is forging. That's obviously what we're talking about here with all this. Obviously, it's all skill sets, right? Because what we're talking about in a shit hits the fan scenario are two things. You either have inventory that you can trade, or you have a skill set that you can barter. And all these things are great. I think whatever interests you, if it's gardening, if it's building, if it's whatever it might be, get interested in it and get a base layer of knowledge that you can then trade for. My big one that I'm weak in that I want to get into this year is forging. I enjoy welding, I enjoy brazing, I enjoy all those different things, but the reality is we may not have those tools and those specialty equipment around if shit really hits the fan. It may be a matter of, hey, if you want to start, going out and tilling your land, you may have to forge some of your own equipment or something like that. And that's one area I'm really lacking in, and I want to set that up. You need
to be the guy in the community that people bring their plow to fix.
Yeah, exactly.
And knows how to do it.
That's my goal for this year, is forging.
My great uncle had the first welder and a set of acetylene torches in our community, and he was self-taught, and everybody brought their stuff to have it welded, to have it repaired, to have it cut, to have it mended back together. And a neighbor of ours, his grandfather was a blacksmith, and up there in their building, he still has all of his handmade blacksmithing tools in his forge. And smithing is one of those things that I've always really wanted to do. I'm with you, Evan. We need to do this.
100%.
I really, because people don't think about those things either.
No.
What happens when you need that? What happens when you need that? What happens when you need that new door hinge?
Yeah. Right.
Where are you going to go?
Right.
So,
and also build fires too, right?
Yeah, and you get to build fires. You get to build really hot fires.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not near as enjoyable as the ones that I partake in. I can tell you.
They hurt a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. That's my goal for the year. Forging.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, those are great things to like. I like the pill book. I like the obviously green thumbs. Everybody should know how to like it. I think it's 1 in 10 people. If everybody used their yard, 1 in 10 people grew all the food in their backyard. It would feed everybody in the world. So it just takes 1 in 10. So that's a great one. Yeah, those are great ones.
What about you, Jay?
Oh, thank you for asking. I've been thinking about this. One of the things that is one of the things that Twitter, like I get the best response is if you dress up like a hippie and start dancing in their lawn, you get the people love that and they want you to go dance in their yard, right?
They do.
Well, I think you do. You seem to be really happy when I send that.
Yeah. Aren't I the one that always gives you the hose when you do that?
Yeah. It's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Now, there's this.
That's not a sign of love.
And you're smiling. I just assumed it. No, there's a gentleman, Jac Spirko, and he's been in this community for a long time. He has a podcast called the Survival Podcast, and he has over 3,000 episodes. And one of the things he's doing recently is that he's doing an intro to permaculture. Right now, he's already got 2 episodes out, and it's going to be about 5. So go look up the Survival Podcast after you're done listening to all of Drew's podcast here, and listen to him. And the idea behind permaculture is it's an ethical way of going through life. One of the guys that founded it, his name is Bill Mollison, and he is quoted with, "The only ethical decision in your life is to take responsibility for yourself and your own children." And then everything from that one idea, taking responsibility for yourself and your children and designing a whole system around it. And they started first with agriculture, homesteading. But really what is being taught is a life design system. It teaches that you need to take control of your own life, and here's how you need to think about it. Here's how the way that you have different zones that you have control of. And the further out they are, the less you have control of, and you just need to let nature take its course. It's by far, it's libertarianism without Jesus, as some people like to say. But it's really the best ethical way to move through life. So if you could go look up anything permaculture, but go look up Jac Spirko. Jac Spirko has been doing this a long time, and he has so much to teach. And permaculture has literally the best way of life. Well, probably not the best way. The Bible might beat that. But the best way in life to go and solve problems and make the world around you a better place. So that's what I would pick.
Yeah, I would second Jac Spirko, man. That's a awesome source of information. And he doesn't just cover that. Like the guy brings on people all the time.
3,000 episodes. Yeah. He's more prolific than Tom Woods, Dave Smith. Almost more prolific than Ron Paul. Like I'm going to throw it out there, because the way he teaches people to take their lives, you take responsibility for yourself. And that's literally the first step that you need to do, is take responsibility for yourself. And then once you've taken your responsibility for yourself, you can now move forward through the world. And when you do it in a certain way, you mitigate risk in your life by getting rid of debt, having food storage, knowing how to grow your own food. And once you have this knowledge, then you're more willing to take risk in life. And when you're more willing to take risk in life, that means you can start your own company, start your own jobs, and then you could grow as a person. And then as you grow as a person, you get to bring your family along, and then you get to bring your friends along. And when you do it this way, by just this first step, taking responsibility for yourself, everybody will follow. Like, people love this stuff. People love it when you take charge and show them and guide them and give them boundaries and stuff like that. This is how we move forward through all of this, is this life design system. Take over your life now.
Oh, yeah. Well, guys, This has been a
I like that.
wonderful evening, man. We're down 1. I hope BK's all right. Has anybody heard from him?
He's with his brother. He's
Okay.
done.
Okay.
Oh well,
Cool.
there it is.
All right. All right. So he's
They're
good, but,
stoned building Legos.
No, they're fighting over Legos. What are you talking about?
Oh well, fighting over Legos after they build them.
But hell,
There's no
But yeah,
real
man.
order to that. So
but yeah, let's plan on doing this again soon, gentlemen.
As always.
All right, love
Hey.
you guys.
it's been great. Yep,
Love you guys
brother.
too.
Thank you.
All right, there you have it. Want to thank all of the guys for coming on yet again. BK, we'll see you on the next one, brother. And yeah, I hope that y'all enjoyed that conversation. Couple of things to point out. Ash's book is going to be coming out. I don't quite have a promo figured out for that yet, but in Reno at the Sober Caucus table, I plan on having several of the books there. So if you're going to Reno, you're going to be at the LP convention, please come by and check out the book. I'll also be, shilling it as much as I possibly can because I've gotten to read the majority of this book and it is so good. Ash has a gift for it. And it's just, I always want to promote people within my little circle that are doing big things. And so thanks for hanging in there with us, guys. I love all of y'all. Hope you're having a great week. And the song of the day is going to be Propaganda Showdown. I know I've played Propaganda before. It's just a solid punk band. I love them. I love them so much, and this song is great. So without any further ado, here is Showdown.
Some fundamental rights inherent, not as bots but men. I do not require a gauge for freedoms of speech, cause I never asked to be a citizen. I never have and never will pledge allegiance. Sitting down and you got up to walk away. Tried to stay but I was right behind you. I was right behind you. I was right behind you. Tension in the stare I cannot bear, close to helpless as the songs I sing inside me ring. Final words are boring, never touch. I know you whispered something in my ear. I couldn't hear you. Girls with the greenest eyes, the first time you have kissed, our quiet softest sighs, song for all of those who shot and missed. Welcome to this world in good identity, pointed to pacified, generously bestowed, my rights and privileges replete with arbitrary values been ascribed. Nothing I can tell you, there's nothing I can say. Stunning conversation, censored thought, completely free at liberty, guaranteed unless cause you decide I'm not. But I'ma be resigned to fall line behind you. Tension in the air, I cannot best. What the fuck am I accomplishing? Absolutely nothing. Always was a boring time for action, but you taught me to be a pawn. It won't last for long. Those who see through the lies are quickly gagged and bound. Ambition realized, tear the whole fucking thing down.